Oh,
We're on.
we're on. Hello and welcome to the swim brief, which I'll have to actually do some editing for to get rid of the awkward first 3 seconds of this recording.
If we're going to get
I
rid of
am joined.
awkward stuff, I mean, then the editing is
Yeah,
just going to be nonstop. So 3
right.
seconds of awkward is nothing compared to like anything we have planned, actually.
Well, thank you for convincing me that I should just leave it
Just leave
in,
it. Yeah.
Joel. Just leave
Just,
it in. That's the kind of authentic experience people expect when they're doing it. I'm joined by Joel Rawlings today. Joel, how
I'm
are
doing
you?
well, thanks. And you? You doing all right?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Um, I even off the top, I do just want to say something. Eric Wyken is not here, um, and I don't know when he will be back to the podcast. He's indicated to me that he doesn't want to record it with us, and I'm not going to say that much more about that, except that I think Eric has been amazing on this podcast. Um, I certainly would love to continue having him on here. I think Joel feels the same
Very much
way.
so, yeah.
Um, yeah, and so just for people who notice that he's not here, I'm saying something, and then when you finally get around to listening in 3 weeks, and you wonder why Eric's not here, and you miss this message, that's your fault. We put something out there today on the show. We're going to cover 3 topics. Is it 3 topics or 4 topics?
No, we
I
talked
can
about
never
three
remember.
things. We're going to talk a little about U.S. Open.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about the
Yep.
transfers receiving scholarships guaranteed, and
For life.
and
No, for the rest of their
and the
eligibility.
continuing Cal women's saga. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think let's get to U.S. Open right off the top, because I was doing my research. This is probably the freshest of any of the topics, even though it's been a little bit since the U.S. Open happened. We're both watching junior results
Mm-hmm.
as we speak. I was kind of looking through the results, Joel, and I was trying to go, where is there a swim that I can really dig my teeth
Yeah.
into, this, that, and the other thing. And overwhelmingly, the most exciting swims from the meet probably came from Summer McIntosh. And I don't want to talk about a specific swim. And I know you noticed her as well. I think most people that watched the meet noticed it. But she's also competing at junior nationals this weekend, which is sort of what reminded me of this as a topic. And it goes back actually to a conversation that I had when I was in Denmark over the summer. People who know a little bit about my business know that I continue to consult with some swim clubs in Denmark. And one of the things they were discussing over there is, they have a national training center, and nominally the national training center's job, these sort of like national governing bodies, centralized locations, are about the fact that they believe that the club environments that they have aren't really conducive to the highest level of performance. So let's create somewhere that can help people who are, trying to swim at the World Championships, Olympics, medals, try to get medals at those European Championships, et cetera, et cetera. But I heard something for the first time, and I kind of think this strategy, whether they were willing or not, Canada has actually already started to employ more and more. And that is, there was an actual proposal within the Danish Swimming Union to say, we are going to intentionally keep our numbers at our national training center really small and invest a lot of money in those people, because we want, right now we have X amount of people, but if we only had, I think it was something like 5 swimmers, which to me is insane. We're going to get into the logistics of that later as a training group to have, because like if 2 people get sick, then almost nobody's at practice. But the idea was, we'll save some money on this, and essentially the rest of these swimmers, if they're college age, we can encourage them to go swim in the U.S.
Yeah.
And some U.S. college will pay for 4 years of development of one of our international caliber athletes, which, since the dawn of me following college swimming, there's been people in America complaining about, like, why is the university system our public university system is being used to fund foreign countries, Olympic programs. But I've never really seen it from the other side where they go, you know what, maybe we should lean into this as an intentional strategy. Which brings me all the way back to Summer McIntosh. She's training in Florida. Canada has invested some money in setting up national training centers, all sorts of, sort of like infrastructure within the country. But I think a lot of their success over the last few years, if you sort of take out Penny Alexiak, a lot of their success has come from a sort of flexibility around having swimmers just train somewhere else than Canada. I don't know what struck you about the summer stuff. I'm going to give you a chance to respond to that, and you can pivot to whatever you want to talk about in terms of Summer McIntosh.
Pivot, man. That was like we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about U.S. Open. And also, this whole thing is a pivot. But I think there's a lot that you just said there that you could unpack. And one of the things was looking at U.S. Open. I was like, it's kind of like a chore. I'm like, all right, we'll go through. But yeah, like you said, Summer McIntosh is just amazing. And I liked watching the clips of her swims. I really like things going on there. But it is just one of those where I would have thought, if you didn't know anything about swimming, you'd be like, just say this is going to be tennis. Would you rather watch the junior national tennis or would you rather watch tennis U.S. Open? Like, I'll go watch the U.S. Open. Right now at Junior Nationals is like, oh my gosh, what an exciting meet this is. I mean, what Sandpiper did out west on the 500, just the women in general. We were talking earlier about a guy, 416, coming in what place? Did he come in third? In a 500. Yeah, and that used to be like, Division I powerhouse records, used to be like that. And one of the things I was thinking is just the stepping stones of like, what's the difference now between junior nationals, senior nationals, and like U.S. Open? It's like they're all kind of like this. And I used to always think like, well, this is this progression that we have. You go, the state meet for the first time. Next time you try to place. Next time you're trying to get on to juniors. Juniors trying to score. Then move to seniors. But now it's kind of like the stepping stone is like, here's your state meet, and then there over the highway, cross that other road to the right, way across the other lake. That's the next stepping stone. That's juniors. There isn't that little map out there to get from one spot to the other. And again, I don't know if that's someone's job or not, but it just seems to be like, well, here's the cuts. Do that. Well, how? Right. Do that, and you'll figure it out just fine. And so that's been the thing I just kind of was thinking about. I mean, these times you have Olympians swimming at juniors. And more power to them. Right. I mean, if that becomes, the goal, like you want your best 1800 swimming, that's great. But what you were saying was like, it was funny because I was talking to a friend of mine and we came to the same thing. It was like, let's look at kind of Canada and what they've been doing. Because I think in the past 8 years, probably more than that. But it just seems like they really have got a good plan in place. Obviously probably more than 8 years. I'm saying that in right away, there's going to be some viewer out there that like, got on the bandwagon of some band early and has the t-shirt like, man, I've been following these guys for years. Like, I've been following Canadian swimming for years. Good on you. Great. I'm just saying.
Curtis Myden. No.
It's like, good to you guys. You got your Canadian t-shirt. Good. But I mean, back when I was coaching college in the early 90s, we would try to get Canadians all the time. And it was really hard to get them out of the system because they're like, we were going to get carded. We've got this financial things. And the club coaches did not want their kids to come out. But like you said, there's been a shift like that. Like, hey, go get yours. While the U.S. is kind of like going, do we want to like divest from the university system? You got other places like, hey, if you want out of it, we'll take it in. We'll send some kids. No worries.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know if I want to credit Canadian swimming as having some genius master plan. Like, it is totally possible that this is just a thing that happened. Just more people started just going like, in fact, I have no idea. Maybe there's pressure on Summer McIntosh to train in Canada and she's just going like, and her parents, I mean, she's a minor, right? So maybe she's just going, no, I want to be in Sarasota because it's the best place for me.
I'm warm.
I want to swim outside. I don't want to be freezing my butt off when I go to morning practice. and I want Emma Wyant's coach to coach me, right?
Yeah.
Like I think I don't know that like Taylor Ruck, coming over to the U.S. or I guess she grew up in Arizona, didn't she? Kind
I
of
thought
like
so.
she's one of those like, I know that Kylie Moss has been a little bit around like training outside of the country. I think as far as I know, of course, we don't have, I don't think, dedicated enough listeners, non-Romanian listeners, to correct us. Only when we make a Popovich video and we mess up our Soviet history, that's when we get corrected, Joel. But I don't think there's a hardcore Canadian fan that is gonna correct. I do think though that like Canada is a good example of an untapped opportunity, even though places have been capitalizing on the opportunity of the American university system. But like, I think there's a opportunity where, if I go back to the Denmark example, where somebody could like intentionally use that as a strategy and like bone up on knowledge about where it might actually be good to send athletes, so that they swim fast in long course in the summer. Because right now, again, it's a haphazard strategy. It's just sort of like, well, whoever is the most charming on a Skype call with this kid from our country, that's where they'll go,
I think one other thing you talked about a little bit was like kind of that, the idea of where you send your elite kids. Like Denmark was able to kind of start to go, okay, well, we're going to send to our elite. And I was, as you mentioned, I was kind of thinking, obviously the elite of a program, of any team, well, Sandpiper obviously looks like half their teams, they're all elite. But for most of the regular schmoes, elite, you got one or two kids. And really, how much programming can you do for one or two when you got to feed the monkey, man? You're like, I need at least 5 lanes to pay for that one lane. And so how much programming can you really do for the elite? And obviously, I think that's where the professional team started coming about, was like, we can program just for these people. We don't need to go to these all-day format meets or what have you. But I think that's one of the issues here, too, is, you got kids coming out of high school. You got kids with these all sorts of like different ranges of ability. And, you got to make them all happy. And that's obviously not an easy task to do.
Yeah, I mean, so that actually reminds me of maybe a B storyline from U.S. Open. The other thing that came across for me was the pro group that sort of recently formed out in Arizona. There's some nice results out of that. And people listening to the podcast know I'm not the world's biggest Bob Bowman fan. But, credit where credit's due. Chase Kalish is swimming better than ever. Yeah. Reagan Smith seems to be swimming better than ever.
Getting back on track,
yeah, I mean, I think those are two sort of notable storylines out of U.S. Open that there is something, at least in the preliminary results, that's positive that's coming out of it.
Yeah, I think another, like, the C topic line out of U.S. Open is ever like talking about how like, oh, look at all these people catching up to Kayla Ledecky, and I think LeBron James has kind of ruined it for everybody, because instead of going like, oh my gosh, look at this woman continuing at this elite level for however 12 years has it been, really, whatever it is, and like, well, yeah, but look at LeBron, he's like 40. Like, at some point we got to be like, dang, this is, or Phelps, same thing. You ruined it for everybody. The bar is now, you got to keep on going for 26. How many years is she supposed to be the number one swimmer? But it's just amazing to stay at this level. And I think so many times we're like, well, yeah, it's Kayla Ledecky, she's the GOAT. And nonetheless, it's like, that's incredible. The level that she's able to sustain and keep on going. It's just amazing.
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see how this McIntosh stuff develops, because, part of having that longevity in swimming is that you have to be able to withstand. I mean, there's literally kind of a new generation every 4 to 5 years. Right. So if you're going to be good for as long as Ledecky is, like, she's sort of entering her 3rd generation of challengers. Right.
It's kind of like I know you love when I bring up like football analogies. But like,
the foot touch.
You have like Derrick Henry, who's an elite level running back. He's been in the league for 11 years. He's going to be a Hall of Fame. He's been to like maybe 2 Pro Bowls, maybe 3 tops, because all these other ones have
Right.
come in for 2 years. Todd Gurley, 2-3 years, and then they're done. 2-3 years. To have sustained excellence like that is just amazing. And like you said, withstanding so many basically elite athletes from all over the world coming again and again and again, and still maintaining this. It's not like, she's blowing the doors off people like she used to, but I think the awesome thing is how she's moved the bar of what's possible, so that all these other people are kind of knocking on the door.
Is Curtis Martin still playing in the league? I liked him at running back. Is he still in there?
Probably picking up some
Emmett
couple
Smith
rips here or there. Yep.
What about Emmett Smith?
Sure. All right, next topic.
All right, let's move on to the next topic. There were a couple articles. There had sort of been no news with regards to Teri McKeever and having been removed as coach. I guess she was placed on administrative leave, is the official legalese we're using to describe her situation at Cal. And there's just been basically no news for this entire year. And then there were a couple articles that came out in the lead up here over the last few weeks in the lead up. I guess, I don't know if they were intentionally placed in the lead up to Cal swimming their midseason invite, but it is sort of suspicious timing. The first one that I want to get your reaction to was 48 people writing letters supporting McKeever. And this was, of course, according to the Orange County Register. One of them was a former athlete that she coached, Alicia Wilson. There's some really notable coaches on this list. Jill Sturkle, who coached at University of Texas, Kathy Wright-Egger, former Purdue head coach, Susan Teeter, former head coach of Princeton, and at the end of this too, Mike Stromberg, a club coach out in Colorado.
He used to coach at North Dakota, University of North Dakota. He was longtime coach at really successful at North Dakota, which, like, anybody who can be extremely successful at North Dakota probably puts you in the 99th percentile of swim coaches. That's just my opinion. So what do you make of this article with people coming up and some of the quotes that they had? Because I've got my opinion, but I'm curious to hear from you first. Well, I think it's one of those where I was kind of interested in how it's all these like retired coaches, but I think that's kind of how it has to be in a situation like this. Was again, you never want to be on the wrong side of a story like this. Like again,
right.
When we step back, because if you start to say anything right away, people are like, well, this coach did this for me, or you're completely insensitive about this. Take like the Weinstein issue, where if all of a sudden an actor or actress came out and said, you know what, you never did anything bad to me, all of a sudden is like that. Is that that's basically saying to everyone else that you lied in a sense. Even though it was like, well, this is my thing. And so no one wants to be on that side of it. But I think as it sits around for a little while, people are like, you know what, maybe I could. And obviously when there's a letter writing and they bring up 48, someone like the lawyer, someone probably behind the scenes like, hey, if you guys want to write a letter in support of her, that'd be great. I remember like when it first came out, one of the athletes wrote in a letter saying, they said what they wanted to say. I'm not saying that anyone's lying or anything like that. I'm saying that they have their view of things, and I have my view of things, and I just want to state my view as well. And so she was counter to the accusations, and again, not picking a side, but just I think that kind of opens the door a little bit where you're like, I want to write in support, I want to write what I think, but I think also there's a lot of people out there who will be like, I don't, if a current job, you're like, there's no winning for you other than just doing what you think is right in your own head, because there's a million ways to lose your job, and this actually is one of them. If you come out on the wrong side of a story and you're like, hey, in that Twitter post or on your Instagram you put this, that's it.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. There's massive, one of the reasons why almost every coach, every NCAA coach, I'll say at least, that was named in this is retired.
Right. That's what's
is
jumped
because
out
there's
for me.
massive downside.
Right.
Yeah, massive downside to almost any opinion on this. Like I actually think even on the other side, like if you were to come out as a current NCAA coach, really hard against Teri, you probably put somewhat of a target on your back as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Either
Because,
direction.
like maybe
Sure.
you got that one kid on your team that reads it and goes like, hey, you did some of that stuff too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and I'm going to go talk to the AD and show him this, this post that you sent and like, here's what you did, like it just, I don't know that there's any upside. So I'm not surprised, I guess, at the list of people. These are all women who were really successful in NCAA coaching. And I am, and I've said this before, and I'm not sure if I've said it fully this way before, I am definitely not unbiased in reading some of this Teri McKeever stuff. And that's because I have heard from a couple of athletes at Cal in the interim from when this story broke until now, one of whom I knew personally prior to swimming at Cal. And in those phone calls, they confirmed a lot of stuff that was in the article for me. And essentially in my own personal life, like that's good enough for me. I guess I read this and I think there's a vein of truth.
As in like confirmed what side? What do you mean by confirmed?
They confirmed, to me, when I read the original article, the description of, and people can go back and read this, the description of Teri greeting people at practice like, hey, you piece of shit.
Okay.
Like that is something that I read and went, well, if you're repeatedly calling people a piece of shit at practice, like that's a fireable offense. Right. And I was very curious as to whether that was legit or not. I feel satisfied that that's legitimately something that happened.
Okay.
At Cal. But what I will say is I think it can both be true what the lawyer is asserting in this, which is that she was discriminated against on the basis of her gender. I've said in other forums, I think you could easily write the same article with some of the same anecdotes, same recollections from athletes about 50 male Division I head swimming and diving coaches, and you won't see that article written because they're not as vulnerable to this attack. And this was coordinated, I think, on some level. Like, I'm not accusing anyone of forming a conspiracy, not accusing any of the swimmers of forming a conspiracy, but it's like the way that it was organized just doesn't ring of just sort of like an organic formation of this stuff. And I guess that's as specific as I'm going to get. Okay. The second thing that I see in these quotes is it's really, I don't know what to say. It's reading, like, I'll just read one of these and then sort of react to it. And maybe that'll give me a chance to explain what I'm about to make as a point. So we've got, Susan Teeter. As a women's coach, I have seen years of immature athletes who take on the role of, quote, mean girls and become toxic and hateful, which is what I believe you have on your hands right now, said Teeter, who coached at the NCAA division level for 45 years. This generation of athletes seems to think if they don't get their way, they will create a way to deal with whoever stands in their way. And like, that is a rough way to talk about people that you coach.
It's a rough way to talk about a whole generation. And maybe if I talk about like I can formulate more, but the idea again that this freedom that student athletes have, maybe it's the pendulum swung a little too far one direction or not. I'm not sure. But having them have more of a voice and more of a say, I think is a positive thing. I read this article again with the same kind of bias and just try to step back. Is like, how could this be prevented in the future? And one of the steps that they currently have in place are the end of the season reviews. And what I got out of this article is every one of her end of the season reviews was exceptional. And so that's the thing, is like that's the marker, isn't it? Or that's one of the safeguards. Like the checks and balances are out if every year this has been going on, where you said you had an athlete that said it, where there's two athletes that said it here, and yet it's not coming through. And so that's what I would like is what are we supposed to have, like a compliance officer sit on deck with every practice, not just swimming, but every practice, football, swimming, everything. You're going to have another layer of bureaucracy just there to listen, or maybe a secondary, like the sports psychology departments a lot of places have. You have a secondary kind of HR kind of department, because that's basically what we're talking about now. If athletes become paid, it's like, well, you're employees, so employees have an HR department. Who's the HR department for a university for an athlete with a complaint like this? The big issue that I thought came out in the very first article with all this was not about what was said, who's wrong or things like that, but the standard that was set up as far as like the expectations of what a coach is, especially a female coach versus a male coach. And so basically, if a female coach is not the classic kind of nurturing, motherly type, right away, is that something where, in a sense, that you are now going to be subject to a lot of other accusations. Skip Kenny, Marine, sniper, all these things. The level of expectation that he was given is like, oh, he's a Marine. It's Marines will do so. Again, it seemed like the bar is set at a much different level than this is someone that should be more motherly. I don't know. Again, that's
100%. And you bring up the Skip Kenny example, and rest in peace, Skip Kenny. But I'm reading. I'm glad at least that the articles around his death recognized the fact that this guy was so petty as a coach that at the end he was purposely erasing people's records because he didn't like them. You know what I mean? And you cannot tell me that somebody who did something that publicly petty was not extremely petty and did some stuff that might even make what was described in the Teri McKeever article look like child's play.
I didn't want
to
open up this can of worms here on this. I was just saying that, again, the expectation of, I just thought immediately like a Skip Kenny who is a Marine. Again, there's almost like a different set of standards for whatever occupation you might have had beforehand. It's like, I would have expected more from a Marine. Like, what? I thought you'd
if you're a woman, you're
right.
If you're a woman, your previous occupation is woman.
Yeah. So so again, like no one came at him going to, you were in the Marine Corps. I'd expect a lot more sensitivity from you. But
right.
Yet it's the same like this, and so you can't really go across schools too much. But within your own athletic department, what are the standards that they're holding those coaches to? And is it going to be different sets of standards for the so-called money sports? Like a basketball coach and football coach. Is that a different set of standards than you have for what they call Olympic sports coaches? And that's again from what all this comes out. I'm really interested to see what they come down to as far as this. If there, obviously there are standards differences between men and women, and standards differences between sports within an athletic department, much less across schools and things like that. And more importantly, I think it'd be nice to have something codified in place where you can say, if you have an issue with a coach, this is the step to go to immediately.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, we've been over this. This has been a consistent theme on the podcast, the HR failings of university athletic departments. I've had my own experience with them back in the day, and it's just
that was as a coach.
They're almost non-existent.
Yeah.
Yes, that was as an actual employee, and they're just non-existent. You listen to the Steve Meller podcast that I had. I guess he was pretty, diplomatic about his time ending at LSU, but you have to imagine that there was an HR solution to what happened there. Nikki Kett, who've had on this podcast, talking about her time at Penn and Michigan. If you listen to that as a normal person who works in HR in a normal workplace, you'd be like, I cannot believe that this is acceptable behavior. And so I hate that. I guess that I feel like the only two outcomes we can have from resolving this story is either Teri loses her lawsuit, right? And we go, well, I guess the judgment was that it was totally fair that she was removed. And like, I do not believe that on any level. I do not believe that it was fair. I'm happy to come out and have my own opinion on that. But on the other side, if Teri wins her lawsuit, we can go, well, nothing bad happened here. And it was just everything was unfair. Like, I know that that's just sort of life, that we'll end up with a black or white resolution to this thing. But I do think to this situation, but I just think the true answer is somewhere in between. And yeah, like something in between would probably help us to define a little bit better what a acceptable standard for coaching behavior is that could be applied, and that maybe swimmers at, any number of other schools could say like, hey, this, like there's been a judgment against this. So it's difficult. Speaking of standards, I just want to bring in the other article, and I actually brought this up just before the podcast. And you hadn't read this one yet, so I'm going to read a little bit of it and let you react to it in real time. This is just updating that, Cal at the outset of this said, we're going to investigate this, could take up to 6 months. Well, it's been 6 months, right, with their independent investigation. If you want to get into it, fine, but I don't even want to get into, I'm putting scare quotes for everybody listening around independent investigation because, okay, fine. I'm going to get into it, Joel.
Man,
you looked curious enough.
Okay.
Well, I mean, the idea that this is independent anyway and not Cal basically paying a lawyer to research whether they have any liability in this that's what it is, right? That's not independent. This person is being paid by Cal to do their best to like see what kind of liability Cal has, because they're maybe assuming that they have some level of liability and they just want to minimize that. I don't know. Somebody who's a better lawyer can figure out that part. But McKeever's lawyer, this guy, Thomas Newkirk, who has won a couple judgments for gender discrimination, most notably Petra. I'm blanking on her last name, from Rutgers right now, Janelle Atkinson at Stony Brook. Two kind of lower profile ones. And he writes in and actually asks the question that you and I have just been discussing that. And he says, I ask everyone the same question. Do you have any effing clue? I'm changing the expletive because we already did 2 expletives on this podcast. What coaching standards are. Yeah. I did. Yeah. Quote, how is a coach supposed to behave? No one has answered the simple question that one time. What you're doing is interpreting Teri's entire coaching career through the lens of about 10% of her athletes who have a negative reaction. Division I athletics is incredibly difficult. Lots of people can have real, honest depression. It's a character building process that is going to have consequences for anybody, including a Dave Durden team. But did you bother to check out how Dave Durden is coaching before you accuse Teri of being abusive? She has 28 years and thousands of witnesses who said she wasn't. Quote, he goes on, does Dave Durden put pressure on his athletes to perform? Does he put serious pressure on them? Does he control their eating, control their sleeping? Does he control things that are beyond even what Teri McKeever's doing? I assure you he likely does, because he runs an elite program. No one's actually determining what the standards of coaching are, including the administration, to know where the line is, he continued. Like, for example, I'm speaking with passion and an extra 10% of volume in my voice because this is a thing I feel passionate about. Am I over the line because I said effing once? How do we know? I think he's addressing my criticism in there. Yeah. You've got to look at other lawyers and look at how they talk on the phone when advocating their position.
Ooh, he's good.
Am I over the line or not? Yeah, I mean, look, he is good.
Part is good. Obviously, as any swim coach reading that would be like, they don't like how you're throwing another program under the bus like that. Like right away, like, because you said like Dave Durden, likely. Again, we don't go to courts of law over likely.
It's a very ambiguous accusation at Dave Durden,
right? Yeah. And so that's the thing, is that has nothing to do with courtroom. likely, you don't bring up likely. That's Fox News. You know what I've been reading about is communists marching the streets of. Again, you're like, that's not really how you'd like it to come about. But I think that, like we were talking about earlier, was the idea of what's the outcome going to be. As you mentioned, like it's going to be, we all want it to be in a tidy little box. Like, okay, well, this person's guilty, therefore everything they've ever done is wrong, and we're going to expunge the record. Like, you can't listen to a Michael Jackson album anymore because now you're supporting someone that's a pedophile. It's the same kind of thing here. We're like, well, you can't say anything that's happened in the past is good because this has happened here. And so it becomes one of those where the outcome for this, and I think why they're so passionate about it, has nothing to do with her retaining her job anymore. Obviously, she can't retain her job. In the court of public opinion, which is what recruiting is, you're not going to get another recruit, not an elite level, high level recruit like you want to get. The outcome is, I think, she's trying to protect her legacy. I'm sure her retirement's intact. I'm sure her pension for years is intact. It's not like she's, going to lose out on all these endorsement deals that us ex-coaches seem to be just like, wading into. What she's fighting for is her legacy. And what she's fighting for is going to be the legacy of what, other women coaches out there, someone that can be on the Olympic staff. They can be the head Olympic coach because it's so rare for women to get these opportunities. So I understand his passion. I understand her passion. But I think in the end, obviously, it's no longer about the job. I mean, that's gone. In the 6 months, for her, it's going to be like whatever it takes, because this is my legacy. Because all those other things that she's done will be thrown away too. And again, I'm not trying to hop on either side of this. I'm just trying to step back a little bit and look at it as like what's going to come out of this, for the athletes in the future, not just the athletes that were in the program, but all athletes. What's going to happen for women coaches, and again, not just Teri, but all women coaches and all of us coaches too, club coaches, college coaches. What are the standards that we're going to abide by? Like I was saying with Skip Kenny being a Marine, is he going to be afforded more, leeway? It's like if I'm coaching football, I'm afforded a lot more leeway, but I'm the swimming coach, so I'm supposed to be a different kind of coach than the football coach. Obviously, you'd hope so, but again, now that becomes legally binding. You acted like the football coach in this regards. Therefore, you too can go to the court. So that I think there's a lot of things that are at play. I know a lot of people probably just want it to go away and not hear about it. But I think there's a lot of things that apply to every single level of coaching, men, women, everyone like that.
I think you're right. And it makes me think more than anything that this is. You're right. There's no scenario at the end of this where Teri McKeever comes back as Cal coach. I just can't foresee it. I think, honestly, they are open negotiating that. At least Teri's lawyer is negotiating out and open a settlement, because when he introduces stuff like this, first, I think, there's a couple layers to what he's doing. The swearing, I have to believe, isn't totally intentional.
Oh yeah, I thought that was genius.
It's basically arguing his case.
Yeah, that was like, oh man,
I mean,
I didn't see that coming. Like, man, I got hit with the blind side. I can't believe it. Yeah.
Yeah, but the other end of it is when he hints at the Durden stuff. He's basically saying to Cal, "Hey, right. Cal, do you want to have depositions where I find the most disgruntled former athlete of Dave Durden and put him up on the stand and have him share every grievance he has with Dave Durden, like in open court, or do you want to settle?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, it's we can't compare like Stanford to Cal, but they're going to compare within the athletic department, and so they're going to start with as close to apples as you can with the men's program.
Yeah.
But I guarantee they're going to go through every program. Hey, there's a men's soccer team and a women's soccer team. What are the standards you held there? There's baseball, there's softball. What are the standards? Are they, and again, so it's just going to go case by case. So they're definitely going to go scorched earth. There's no going back to this athletic department. They're going to burn the whole place down. Again, when they're throwing the name Dave Durden out there, I think the idea was just that they're going to start comparing swim program to swim program right now. Next step is going to be, how about that football program? Every one of these coaches clean? How about this? How come this person who has exceptional records all the way through? And again, I'm not saying that makes someone innocent. I'm saying it's a fault on their part that they didn't have more accountability or more procedures in place. But nonetheless, like, so you're just going to have all those procedures now for swimming team. What about all the other sports I just mentioned? And I think that's why they're going to go scorched earth throughout. And it's going to sound, it sounds like me, my knee-jerk reaction is, man, they're throwing the men's program under the bus, and that's definitely not right. But again, when I stop and take a step back, where I started to think, like, this isn't about getting a job or holding a job. This is about protecting a legacy. That's what you're going to end up doing. Go scorched earth. And right now, it's going to be the whole athletic department is what they're talking about bringing down. And I got a feeling it's not going to be about the money. It's going to be about, I just want my legacy to be somewhat intact from this, which I don't know if you can at some point.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? Okay, so let's get to the last thing that I wanted to talk about, because somebody told me this. Actually, credit to Ryan Bubb, who I talked to on the phone a week and a half ago, who's a coach who clued me in to this existence of this. And then, of course, there was a convenient article that came out pretty just a few days afterwards. So it gave us an opportunity to reference something. Essentially, what's happening in NCAA Division I recruiting is that there's been some changes to the transfer procedure. And like, transfers overall have seen pretty sort of kind of chaotic change in the transfer system, even in the last 10 years since I was a college swim coach. Things, the existence of the transfer portal and the sort of ease of transfer for student athletes has gone up considerably. We've seen more people transfer. Obviously, there's been sort of maybe some extra transfers in swimming and some other sports. I would guess, I don't know about other sports, with people getting another year of eligibility due to the pandemic. So we're sort of coming to the end of that relatively soon. But what this rule change says is that an athlete is guaranteed whatever scholarship they are offered at the point of transfer for the duration of their eligibility. And this, as I've seen it interpreted, means also regardless of whether they actually swim or do anything at the school that they transfer to. So they could transfer, theoretically, I don't know how many people would actually do this, they could transfer, get a 40% scholarship, quit the next day, and they would have their scholarship paid through the end of, whenever their eligibility. They could go one place for a year and have 3 years left and have 3 years of scholarship and not compete in the sport of swimming or practice the sport of swimming from that point forward. And so it's a pretty dramatic change. And I think when I listened to it first, like, I had this sort of shock and awe reaction. Like, I was like, oh man, this is gonna make transferring so fraught, and wow, that's so unfair to the schools and this, that, and the other thing. And I went, you know what? After I thought about it for like 10 more minutes, I decided this is a good thing. This is a good thing. Because what it I think ultimately will do down the line is, first off, if you're looking at somebody as a transfer, you got to do your job vetting that person first, right? So if we present that nightmare scenario that I proposed, like, you got to do your job in recruiting and make sure you have somebody that's still interested in competing in the sport of swimming first. Second of all, I'll go back to my first college coaching experience was at the University of Pennsylvania. We had no scholarships, right? And the only thing that we had, it was sort of similar to this. The only thing that we had to use, our only carrot in recruiting, was admissions. Well, kids got into the school and then they could quit the day after they were admitted. They could quit swimming and they still got into Penn. It's not like Penn was going to rescind their, admissions letter. They could just do that. And what it created for us as coaches is we had to give them a reason to swim. We couldn't just intimidate them into swimming, because they could just go, I'm out. Like, I don't, you're an ass. I don't want to swim here. Like, I'll go do something else with my life. I'm a 19-year-old who's going to the University of Pennsylvania. The world is my oyster. Like, I can do whatever I want. And I thought it actually made me a lot better as a coach, because I just didn't, I basically got disarmed from using, sort of any sort of threats or fear or intimidation. Oh, we'll pull this from you if you don't do what we ask you to do. So I actually think it's a positive heading into an era where, college coaches have been sort of disarmed on that level. What was your reaction?
Well, I had a lot of thoughts on this as far as questions, because as you said, you didn't have scholarships. So what happens if someone is on scholarship at a university, they go to Harvard? Harvard's supposed to come up with a scholarship again. So you go to a non-scholarship school, then there's no, it says it's guaranteed. I guess I'm wondering if they can rescind it.
No, it's the school. It's what the school on the other end offers you. So if you're going to transfer to Harvard, you won't get offered a scholarship.
Right. Okay. So that's the thing is, I remember dealing with Division III. There'd be some of these private schools that would all of a sudden offer the moon for year one. They're like, we're going to give you 95%. It's going to be cheaper than going anywhere in the world. And then the second year, all of a sudden, we're down to 50%. And then third year, all those scholarships aren't available. You're down. So that's what I like, was the idea that it's almost like you kind of get locked in a little bit more, so that you're not all of a sudden, because they know, especially if you transfer once, you're not probably going to want to transfer again, because you've already lost a bunch of credits. You're going to lose more time. You got to uproot and things. And I think sometimes that people look at sports too much like they look at their fantasy football team. Well, I'll just switch this for this, and forget the humanity of the kids being like, I don't want to move again. I don't want to leave more friends again. I don't want to do that again. And the transfers that I see aren't always the elite athletes seeking out. In this case, it's like you said with COVID, it's a lot of people looking to get a grad school year for free. Like, great. I'm going to start getting my MBA paid for. That's awesome. And I got 1 year into it, and I get to swim. Or I see a lot of people basically just, I want to come home and swim closer to home. And that's more often than not. I think a lot of times we get caught up in the anger and the negativity of oh, they're just angry at this. It's like, well, no, they're not angry. They're just homesick. It's an 18-year-old kid that committed when she was 14. What do you expect? Things change and didn't realize that's, they're like, my dream is to swim, wherever it might be. And all of a sudden they realize, what, that's my dream. What I really like I like to be close to my friends and family, and I want to move home. And that happens too. I think we think too often, the first thought is about the disgruntled athlete, and rather than, again, the people that are going to benefit. And so I always try to look at it if it's one person taking advantage of the system, but 9 people getting help from the system, let's help the 9. And every now and then one will use it in a negative way, and that's fine. But like you said, I think it's right for the athlete to be, guaranteed if this is what they're getting, and they're going to be able to get that, then they should be held to that. Of course, the standards of work and things. Right away, we think, well, what about the one lazy kid? It's like, in all my years of coaching swimming, hundreds and hundreds of kids, you get a couple out of 100. And that's a huge number. I'm like rounding up to get to 2 out of 100. It's probably closer to maybe 1,000, 1 in 1,000. We just don't see it. And so for people to get upset and think about the school, I think it's all funny money anyway. Scholarships make cryptocurrency look like solid investments at this point. Scholarships are it's just air. They just say it's money. It's not money. It's just a kid sitting in class for free. Come on. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's a thing that they've inflated the value of so much, and then they'll say, oh, but we'll give you a discount.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, it's the Black Friday markups of the university system. They've increased the prices by 100%. Now we're going to give it to you for 50. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, oh, hey, Joel, I got this $30,000 TV to you, but I'll sell it to you for only $7,000.
Right.
Like, what? I don't want to spend $7,000 on a TV.
And not only that, in the NCAA system, it's and that we're going to tell you what kind of TV it is, because those other ones aren't going to fit into our practice times or schedules. So you're just going to have to deal with this.
Right.
So here's your major for 7th. I didn't want that one. So yeah, I think there's so many flaws in the system, and if you can somehow guarantee something to a kid, I'm all for it at this point. And then if I ever coach Division I, then I'm going to be totally against it, and I want more power back. So, but for now, I'm all for
you
athlete.
want more power back so you can intimidate kids,
Intimidation,
right?
That's the way to go.
Yeah. I was going to say too, I mean, as you're talking about the 2 out of 100, I go, if you're coaching in college, first, like, obviously there's a difference as you go to different levels, but ultimately you've got somebody who chose to keep swimming after they left their parents. Right. If you have a lot of those people who don't want to show up to practice and do the sort of you probably need to look inside.
They usually have already weaned themselves out first day, because I think it's 7% of swimmers that were in high school swimming or club swimming actually swim in college, and so if you get one of those 7% and they're already out, it's they're going to be out anyway, so it's okay.
Yeah. And again, we're talking about Division I athletes that are going to be offered a scholarship. How many of those are going to be people that are really unmotivated to swim? I'm glad that we had a lot of crossover on that. I guess I did read it first as a cranky coach, and I want to come out publicly in favor of the rule change, since I know there's going to be a lot of people complaining about it. We might get more anger back on that one than even the streamlined stuff.
No, you invoked the name of a former Stanford coach. You did. And so I see the email coming in, and it was not me. So, and so we'll just...
I just want everybody to know that Joel supplied me with all my Skip Kenny talking points before the podcast. Right. He said, you say this because I don't want to be saying it, but I want somebody to say it. I think somebody should say it, but it shouldn't be me.
I'm dealing with Romania. You're dealing with all of Stanford now, because you already bashed the women's program. Now you bashed the men's program.
That's right.
All right.
Skip. Yeah. I swam against Tobias Orwell at a meet in Canada. When I say swam against, I think I saw him in the distance.
Yeah, you swam against. He was swimming against someone else a little bit farther along. Yeah,
he was. I don't think anybody was really swimming against him in the meet that I showed up to. So that makes us best friends, and I took it personally when Skip erased his record. So that's just how it is.
Understood.
All right. Everybody, thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Joel, thank you for being here. If you want more positive psychology-based social media content, you can go to Christy_coach at Instagram, Christy Sanders Coaching on Facebook. Like and subscribe. Give me your Skip Kenny opinions in the comments. Give me your U.S. Open opinions. Give me your Canadian swimming opinions. Give us some opinions down in the comment section of this. I'm going to just keep begging until the day that we actually start getting people's opinions.
Yeah, I'll read them.
And then I'm probably going to say, please stop, please, because I know what commenting on the internet looks like. Anyway, thank you to everybody. And we'll be back, I think, next week as well.
Thank you. Done.